You're live, your worship.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rousseau. All right, council, I'd like to call this regular council meeting of November 28th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make the motion? Council Devlin, Council Cherry, all in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting in November 14th. Councilor Stapenhurst, Councilor Devlin, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I will go right on to announcements from the mayor. This week here in Revelstoke, it is Welcome Week, so there's festivities and events going on. Today, Spirit of Revelstoke Awards will be given out, and I hope to be there if we're done the council meeting. But other than that, welcome to the people who are here in our community who come for work. We're here to visit, and hopefully they'll be able to understand what Revelstoke's all about by meeting people in your community. Having said that, we're going to move on to item 8A, recommendations from committees. Committee of the Whole Bylaw Offense Notice 2370. And Mr. Gipp, any presentation on that before I ask for staff or council to put this motion on?
No, your worship, no presentation, but I am here to answer any questions.
All right, appreciate it. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please, Councilor Devlin.
Move the bylaw offense notice bylaw number 2370 brought forward for considered for first, second, and third reading on Tuesday, November 28th, 2023, and that the CAO and corporate officer be authorized to execute bylaw notice dispute and adjudication registry agreement with partner municipalities.
Second for the motion, please, Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? So it's basically putting in the adjudication process and moving forward, correct?
Your worship, the readings of the bylaw will come later on in the agenda.
Okay.
This is just what the committee of the whole recommended.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you for that. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item number 2.
Move that the proposed amendments to bylaw enforcement policy B2 dated November 16th, 2023 be adopted.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8B, snow and ice control policy, repeal and replace. Someone want to put that on the table? Councilor Orlando.
I move that policy PW10 sidewalk and street snow removal 2000 be rescinded, and that the proposed new PW10 snow and ice control bylaw, I assume, dated November 14th, 2023 be approved.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any discussion on that motion? Go ahead, Councilor Orlando.
Just for clarity for the public who might be watching along, we just have a quick recap as to what's going on here.
So, Mr. Manson, do you want to just go over that quickly for us?
Sure.
Okay.
The CEO, Mayor and Council, this update to this policy or this replacement of this policy basically helps cover the city for any liability concerns that we had with the previous policy. It prioritizes the routes around town. So we have a priority 1 to 3 system, whereas we didn't have that priority system before. So that puts this in place.
Okay.
That's a quick recap.
Good. Quick recap. Any follow-up, Council? No. All right. Any other comments or questions from Council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item number 2, Councilor on.
And I move part 2 that the service level options be considered during the 2025 budget discussion.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any discussion on this part of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to item C, municipal asset naming policy deferral. Someone want to put that on the table, Councilor Cherry?
I move that consideration of municipal asset naming policy be deferred until January 2024.
Second for the motion, Councilor Devlin. Any comments on that, Ms. Floyd? None?
Your worship.
All right. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item D, short-term rental accommodation act amendment. Councillor Roman.
Yeah, I'm prepared to get it on the table for discussion. Read this, is that
Yes, sir.
okay? Yeah, so I move that staff prepare an information report on Bill 35 for a special committee of the whole meeting in January 2024, and that a public information meeting be scheduled.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Discussion on the motion. Do you have questions or anything? Mr. Simon is online if you want to ask. Councillor Leno.
Yeah, just to follow up, since I introduced the motion, for, again, mostly for the benefit of the public, the provincial government has introduced new legislation regulating short-term rentals. And we are preparing a public information meeting for January so that people with questions, residents with questions can come out and ask them about the changes. That is sort of a first step in deciding how we're going to approach that here in Revelstoke. In the interim, I know myself, other mayor and council and staff have been reaching out to the provincial government to seek clarification, attending information sessions, seeking to understand and learn the changes and how they will work. And one thing I would note is that the provincial government has introduced an implementation schedule, phased implementation schedule for 2024. So different aspects of the new legislation will come into effect at various dates. So it's my opinion that there's not really a big rush on this, whether you're for example, the much discussed opt-in clause or against it. We have lots of time to adapt to this. So this is part of a controlled approach to start with information for the public about the changes that are ahead.
Okay, appreciate it. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through the chair, I was just hoping Mr. Simon can just give us a quick heads up on what the opt-in clause or option is for, as there seems to be a lot of misinformation going around the community.
Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, Councillor Cherry, the opt-in clause is with respect to the permanent residency requirement, where anyone who's using or operating a short-term rental in town, excluding hotels and motels, would require to operate it out of their principal residence. So that's the only item that's on debate for opting in or not opting in. All the other provisions of the legislation are automatically applicable to Revelstoke.
Perfect. And just to follow up, just for anybody listening, any municipal bylaws we put on top of that, or like we're able to put more on top of that, this is a baseline for everyone in the province.
And the whole idea of bringing a report back and talking about this, really getting down to the basics of what the options are, what's best for the community. We're already have already put some things in place as far as short-term rentals, and we may want to follow our route as Mr. Simon has laid out. And we don't want people to assume that automatically that this city is going to opt in or not opt in. We want to look at the options as councillors have mentioned. Councillor Dunn, do you have a comment?
I just had a follow-up question for Mr. Simon, just to touch on the motels and hotels. Does this legislation have anything to do with bed and breakfast? Is that an entirely different subset?
Mr. Simon, comment?
Through your worship, very good question to Councillor Devlin. Staff have kind of the same questions to the province as well. It's our understanding, though, that they would be wrapped up in this. But generally speaking, bed and breakfasts are already operated by an on-site operator out of their primary residence. So, with respect to the opt-in clause, they wouldn't really be impacted by it, generally speaking. And then the other provisions of the legislation also would not impact them right now.
Okay.
All right, good. Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to item part 2, please. Councillor Orlando, would you put that on for us?
Sure. Part 2, I move that staff provide a detailed presentation on Bill 35 in early 2024.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw offense notice 2370 being read. Someone want to put that motion on, please. Councillor Staples.
Move that bylaw offense notice bylaw number 2370 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder for that motion, please, Councillor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Leno.
Your worship, if there is no discussion from council, through the chair, I would also just, if staff is available, to do a quick recap, so that anyone watching in will have the high level understanding of what this is.
Mr. Gipp, do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that.
Thank you.
So this bylaw that's in front of you today is our draft adjudication bylaw. Essentially what this is to enable a different type of ticketing system for the city of Revelstoke. So in October, the city was added into the schedule to allow us to implement this adjudication system. This is a much different system than our current municipal ticketing system. This allows us to be able to leave the notices on vehicles, the doors, email it. There is the big difference. One of the big noticeable differences is the amount related to each individual offense. It is capped at currently at 500 versus municipal ticketing, which is 1,000. And also in conversation with the province about increasing that number as well. But this is a much simpler system that allows our officers better additional resources for issues like parking and short-term rentals.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Leno.
Thanks. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. This has been good to see. One of the challenges the community faces and the bylaw enforcement department faces with short-term rental enforcement is that it is challenging to serve notice, and although you can take actual actions, the legal part of it can be long and drawn out and challenging, such as a requirement to serve people in person. That also applies to parking tickets, parking enforcement. You can issue a ticket, but there is not as much assurance that it is going to be paid, and it is challenging to follow up. So this is an active step by council to work with staff to improve our systems to deal with these challenges that staff are facing. Another thing I would notice is that although the fine is capped at $500 for the adjudication system, the corporate officer has put it on a schedule of things to consider for lobbying in our next year when we head to SILGA and then UBCM to ask the province to raise the cap of $500 for this system. And finally, I would say that this system works in parallel with the existing MTI system. So it is an additional tool. It does not replace one tool with the other. It just provides an additional tool for staff to achieve their enforcement objectives.
Appreciate the comments. All right, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Moving on to item 9B, fees and charges amendment bylaw. Someone put that on table, please. Councillor Dillon.
Move the fees and charges amendment bylaw.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? This is basically our annual update for 2024. All of the fees and charges have been discussed through committee of the whole, through previous council meetings, so now we're adopting this bylaw. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 9C, utility rate amendment bylaw. Councillor Devlin.
Move the utility rate amendment bylaw number 2372.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Stephenhurst. Any discussion on this motion? Similar to the previous motion where we've already discussed this both in committee of the whole and in this council. So now we're just adopting. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. 5-year plan. Someone will do that for me, please. Councillor Stephenhurst.
I move that the 5-year financial plan bylaw amendment 2023-11-28 RPT be adopted.
So that is, I'm actually seeing a 2023-2027 5-year financial plan. Is the same one, or am I reading it wrong?
That's the same one, Your Worship. So this is an amendment to the existing 2023 to 2027.
So we're adopting this or reading this the first, second, and third time. So I've got two different.
We're reading it at first, second, and third time.
Okay, perfect.
My apologies.
Okay. So 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan. First, second, and third time. Second for the motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on this? Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, through the chair, I would appreciate a little bit of explanation from staff on the subject matter here. I was not 100% clear on the report, so maybe if we could ask for a summary. I don't know if the Director of Finance is available.
Ms. Moore, would you like to make comments on the 5-year financial plan amendment, please?
Through the chair, this is a housekeeping item related to a motion provided from council back in July 2023 to amend the financial plan bylaw to adjust the school safety project from 1.5 million to 2.1 million. The reason why it's coming forward about 5-6 months later is from an efficiency standpoint. If we need to do other amendments to the bylaw that come up throughout the year, it is all being amended in one go instead of council amending the bylaw multiple times. I'm not anticipating any other amendments to the 2023 5-year financial plan bylaw. So it is now being brought forward to council to amend the bylaw based off of the resolution and change to the project budget for the school safety project.
Thanks for the explanation. Is there a follow-up, Councillor Orlando?
Your worship, no, thank you.
All right. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Now moving on to staff reports, economic development, MRDT affordable housing plan. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I move that the municipal and regional district tax affordable housing plan be approved.
It's for 2024. Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion on the motion or questions from Ms. Brown? Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I would just request, since it was under the staff report section, maybe just a quick recap and report from Ms. Braun, and apologies, I'm having some internet connectivity issues. So,
absolutely, I think actually I would ask Taha Tan to speak to this because he wrote the majority of the attachment of the appendix itself. My report basically recaps the background of how we came to through the process, and the background documents when development services presented the housing policy. The draft housing solutions project management plan that Julie presented to council, but this is really about the appendix that enables us to utilize the OEP funds for affordable housing. We must submit this every year and have it approved by Destination BC, and they in turn send it up to Housing Branch for approval, and that enables us to release the funds the following year. So we must go through this step, irrespective of our own policies about this.
Okay, thank you.
So Taha can say.
Mr. Tia, would you like to weigh in, please?
Yes, this appendix going to the province is an opportunity for us to update on the various initiatives that the city has taken to promote affordable housing construction within the community, and to highlight some of the projects going forward, be that development on Oscar Street, the Downey Street project to bring additional affordable housing unit development that's BC Housing funded, or support in general for the Community Housing Society, the Revelstoke Community Housing Society, and their development efforts. And this just gives a bit of a roadmap for requesting approvals for expenditures of OMF funding, which is and allocating it through the Affordable Housing Reserve.
Follow up, Council.
Your worship, yeah, thank you. Just by way of a comment, again, thank you to staff for the presentation as well as the work on this project. I just want to emphasize to anyone who may be listening, residents of Revelstoke, that we have so much going on with the housing file here. We have, half a dozen or more big initiatives, and including with the city and in collaboration with the Revelstoke Community Housing Society, where I'm the rep, the council rep on there, and I just wanted to point out this is one of just many things, and fingers crossed for some really big news in the next month or so. So I just really want to emphasize what a good collaborative effort it has been. I mean, it's been a whirlwind year for me in terms of going, just seeing great teamwork, great work on staff, and the time scale for getting to construction of projects is unfortunately not overnight, but we're probably going to be seeing fruition of some of these projects come forward very soon. So it's very rewarding to see the work, and thanks again to staff for continuing to work on the many facets of this plan, which is coming together.
Appreciate it. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously, please. Thank you. Moving on to item 11B, MRDT one-year tactical plan. Ms. Braun, this is for information only, is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. We had Megan Taylor from Tourism Revelstoke present at the last committee of the whole about what the one-year plan, tactical plan and the budget contained. They've been tweaked somewhat, but for the most part, it's been reviewed at committee of the whole, and it's coming forward for your approval so that we can submit it on the 30th to Destination BC.
Okay.
Now, one quick question I have for Cindy. When I'm looking at the staff reports, I don't actually see the report itself.
That's correct, Ingrid. It was not added. Jillian has it up on the
Okay,
screen.
perfect. Okay. Good, I was thinking, oh my God, did I forget to submit that?
Any comments from council? Councilor Leno.
Your worship, thank you. I guess my comment in terms of reaching out to stakeholders in the community, seeking comment always on items before council, seeking collaboration with community members and stakeholders. There's a lot of spending on this plan. I'm going to vote for the plan. I'm going to approve the plan, but I just want to, for looking ahead for future considerations, after having said we're making a lot of headway on housing, which I truly believe, I always think we can do a little bit more. And when I compare the spending on marketing compared to housing initiatives, I always sort of favor in future reviews looking at how we can find more for housing, how we can find more support to build more resiliency into our social sector, which is making so much headway as it is. This year, we've had a rebound in employment situation in the resort municipality. So since from the start of the pandemic until recently, it was a real struggle to find workers. We have a lot more people in town now, but again, our limitation is housing and our ability for businesses to hire and grow here. So it's a general feeling the more that we do that and focus on housing and social housing to meet all of our objectives as laid out in our planning documents, the more we can do. So that is an observation. I just to be sure stakeholders involved in those marketing efforts have led a multi-pronged approach to shifting from promotion to a management plan. Nevertheless, it is something that I wanted to comment on and think about for consideration in the future, and how we can consider again what the voters told us and the residents have been telling us about redoubling and continuing to redouble our efforts on housing.
Any other comments? Or Ms. Braun?
If no one else has any questions, I would just speak to Councillor Lano. Your point is well taken. I think given that the DMP proposes that as its audacious goal that everybody will be housed over 5 years, and yet there's no mechanism to contribute MRDC, general MRDC money to housing at this point. It only flows through the OEP program, which the city took initiative and initiated that 5 years ago. So you'll notice in the previous report, I did include in there in our appendix going into the province that part of the DMP is to, in order to address audacious goal housing, is to, over the next 4 years, before we have to resubmit another 5-year plan, work with our stakeholders to ensure that we can actually allocate more of the general MRDT revenue to housing. For instance, as Whistler does, they put fully 50% goes to marketing, 50% goes to housing. But that must be voted on by all the accommodators in town, so we must have 50 over 50% of accommodators agree to do that, which is why we can't just do it now. It'd be part of the next 5-year strategy development. So given that that audacious goal is housing, then that does actually give us some ability to implement, any measure we can to see that happen.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a follow-up question to the chair. When you said 50% of accommodators, if one accommodator owns 3 hotels, would they have 3 votes in that, or would they have 1?
It's based on room, bed units. So, bigger hotels would have more sway.
So chains, etc.
Yeah, in other words, when we were, adding CSRD Area B to our tax collection area, there were several of the Heliski operators, for instance, that were not necessarily in favor of collecting that tax. It didn't matter. The vote overall was so weighted by the number of hotels within the city of Revelstoke that according to the ministry's definition of how that is measured, it's percentage of bed units. Percentage of accommodators as measured by the number of bed units they have. Does that make sense?
Well, with that said, I'm looking forward to seeing that change in the future.
So you gotta get the big ones on board. And then
Yeah.
do it.
I'd love to see that with, MRDT taxes or funds going, something like that versus majority marketing in the future.
Follow-up comments? Councilor Lino.
Yes, Your Worship, just a comment through the chair and responding and adding to Ms. Braun's comments. One of the challenges the Revelstoke Community Housing Society has faced is limitations in the OAP funding criteria. So more or less, it's designed for sort of one-off or basis, project by project basis. What I believe, and I think the majority of the board would agree with me, is that we need to build resiliency into these systems, put resources towards it, so we can get some momentum, build some momentum, and keep going with it instead of having to start fresh again and again on a project basis. So perhaps as we explore and put in place these long-term finances, we can seek ways through MRDT to build that resiliency going forward, not specifically for that purpose, but for all purposes in moving the housing portfolio forward.
Great, thank you. All right, someone want to put the motion that's on the screen on the table, please? Councilor Duncan.
I will move that the municipal and regional district tax 2024 tactical plan and budget be approved.
Okay. Seconder for that motion, please. Councilor Orlando. Any further discussion on the motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Opposed? Nope, motion's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11C, fireworks. Someone put the motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Devlin.
Move that Revelstoke Mountain Resort is authorized to set off professional grade fireworks on December 31st, 2023 between the hours of 1900 and 2000 at Revelstoke Mountain Resort located at 2950 Mosey Road, following any terms and conditions relating to fire and life safety as defined within, and that Revelstoke Mountain Resort follows all requirements of the Federal Explosives Regulation 2013 Part 18 display fireworks.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any comments on this motion, Chief DeRosa?
Your Worship, so yes, Revelstoke Mountain Resort intends to host a public fireworks event on New Year's Eve up at the resort. And so bylaw 1772, section 8C authorizes council to authorize the fire chief to authorize the applicant to receive permission. So I'm here to request authorization to authorize the resort to have a fireworks show on New Year's Eve.
Perfect. All right. Any comments from council? Any questions? Saying none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to 11D, short-term lease agreement. This is for a 3-month term. December 1 to February 29th for the boxing club to go in the golf course clubhouse. So, any staff want to weigh in? Mr. Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this is a good news story. We did find a temporary home after a frantic 2-week search to find these folks who were displaced from an aging building. And so they've agreed to take up an interim program between now and into the new year on a temporary basis only on our vacant clubhouse, which is operated by our leasee, the Revelstoke Golf Club. They're happy. We are working on a long-term home and trying to find space to accommodate them long-term. But I want to applaud all staff in assisting in finding their temporary home. And we're asking council to approve this disposition. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Cronin. So I'll put the motion on the table for me, please. Councillor Devlin.
Move that notice be given of the city's intention to dispose of an interest in a portion of land located at 171 Columbia Park Drive via lease agreement to the Boxing Club for a 3-month term, December 1st, 2023 to February 29th, 2024 for the sum of $10.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Stapleton. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor
I
Stapleton.
just want to echo what Mr. Parliament said earlier and applaud the staff for coming up with this creative solution and providing the Boxing Club with a place to lease.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Lamb, go ahead.
Just a question for staff, for the chair. This is a short-term lease. After the short term, the 3-month lease, does staff have any direction on what happens next?
In response, Mr. Mayor, after that, it'll be on a month-to-month, but keep in mind that the golf course usually starts up in, they start preparing for the season in April, May, and they're open. What we're trying to do is find them a long-term. And we do have a couple of civic facilities we're looking at. So in short, we have about 90 days to 120 days maximum to find them a long-term home. And we're working diligently on the long-term solution, but we only have a temporary 90-day window right now at the golf club.
And this is basically our staff are going out of their way to find them space, but it doesn't preclude us or them to go out and find their own place in the meantime.
Correct.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to item 13A, communications, Ministry of Citizen Services letter, grant in lieu of property tax. We got a letter from Minister Bear. We have received some funds granted in lieu in the amount of $30,352.24, and we will give $951.02 to CSRD for their portion. This is basically provides for services infrastructure in our community. It's the 2023 grant in lieu property tax payment. Any comments from council on that? Being none, I will go on to Ministry of Housing letter. We received a letter from Minister Kahlon regarding infrastructure. Any comments or questions from council on that? This is weighing in on Bill 46 and 47. Mr. Simon is here online to speak to any of this, if any of council want to hear comments from him. Councilor Orlando?
Yeah, your worship, through the chair, it would be great to get an update from Mr. Simon on his tack on these changes, including 44, 47, as well as the new amenity cost charges. I do know for background that Mr. Simon has been very active on this and has been updating council with communications, and this does dovetail with our, or does coincide with our ongoing zoning bylaw work. So maybe I'll hand it over to the expert and Mr. Simon to let us know his thoughts.
Yeah.
Through your worship to all of council, it's just really brief update. I won't take up a lot of time. 3 recent bills that are still working their way, excuse me, through the provincial legislature to receive royal assent. We have Bill 44. Bill 44 will be a requirement for municipalities to accommodate infill development, what the province is calling small scale multi-unit development, like you guys need another acronym, SSMU. And basically what it's going to do is it will require us to allow 3 units on every lot that is 280 square meters or less, that is zoned single family, and 4 units on every lot that is greater than 280 square meters. And to give you guys context, when you drive by Newlands Road, there's some new single family houses across from the hospital. That's about half the size of one of those lots. So half of that lot, triple the density, is going to be the new minimum that we need to accommodate. We'll have to accommodate 6 units within proximity to transit. Staff are awaiting an implementation guide from the province, and our plan is to address this as part of our ongoing zoning work. However, the requirement to implement those changes is June 30th of next year. So it is likely we will have to bring an amending bylaw forward to council to address those changes in advance of the full zoning bylaw comprehensive rewrite being completed. So council can anticipate an amending bylaw to meet the provincial legislation. And then after that is through the process, we will have the comprehensive repeal and replace zoning bylaw come forward. And the reason for that is staff don't want to rush the zoning bylaw update. It's a very important project and it's beyond the scale of this one change. And we want to make sure that we get it right and that the community has time to absorb what the changes are within it. Bill 46 has to do with development financing. So there was changes to the DCC, the development cost charge legislation. That is the manner by which we collect fees from new development to account for the per capita impact that that new development has on the city servicing infrastructure. So we can now collect fees for things like fire halls, police stations, as well as solid waste and recycling facilities. And the other piece of that legislation was a new type of charge called an amenity cost charge. So we can collect amenity cost charges in a very similar way that you do development cost charges. So at building permit stage and subdivision stage, and those amenity cost charges, or ACCs, can be used to construct things like recreational facilities, other public amenities, daycares, libraries. So it's a way for amenities that DCCs can't accommodate to be captured. Staff will be looking at how we can utilize the new tools in the legislation as part of the ongoing DCC bylaw review that is anticipated to continue through 2024. And then lastly, Bill 47, our understanding as of right now is it will not be applicable to Revelstoke. It'll mostly be applicable to the Lower Mainland, but that is where when you have areas with a high concentration of transit infrastructure, so mainly rail as well as rapid bus transit, there will be mandatory requirements for large-scale densification around those major transit centers. Other than that, that's a really quick synopsis. The city, I believe, and Ms. Floyd can correct me if I'm wrong, has done a press release on this to kind of give an overview of the main changes as well as how the city is working to address them. And staff are here to answer any questions, but it's interesting times. It's about 6 years worth of legislation wrapped up in about 3 weeks. So definitely all municipalities have their work cut out for them to implement.
Follow up, Councilor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through the chair, Mr. Simon. Our current zoning bylaw has townhome lots being about 280 square meters, if I'm correct.
Through your worship, they would be anywhere from 200 square meters to 350 approximately, depending on the zone.
So in that same, sorry, follow up to the chair, in that same legislation, then a lot that size is to have 3 units of housing on it?
Yeah, through your worship, and maybe a better example than the Newlands is whenever anyone walks through downtown and we got those narrow 25-foot lots, that's about 220 square meters. So we're going to have to accommodate 3 units on there.
Okay, it's interesting.
So it's going to be some
planning.
Be some planning. Yep, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, so through the chair, so could a person say that what the world has known, or in Canada in general, R1 and R2 zoning is basically disappearing?
Through your worship, I would describe it as it is expanding so that it can accommodate additional units. So you'll still be able to have just one single family dwelling if you would like. And one thing, if I may, I would just like to take the opportunity to express to the public, for whoever's listening, this change does not mean that you can automatically go and start renovating houses to allow for this. The city still needs to implement these changes through zoning regulations you will still be required to go through the standard building permit, development variance permit if necessary process. So please, if anyone in the public does have questions about how this change does impact them and their property, we encourage you to come into the planning group and chat with us, as opposed to just starting some renovations.
Mr. Palmer, follow up.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe some just sort of general comments. So when I say that the R1 and R2, the ability of the municipality to restrict to one single unit that has been that ability has disappeared. And I'm okay with that. In fact, I would suggest that Revelstoke is ahead of the game, well ahead of the province in enabling through our carriage suites, our carriage homes and garden suites, what we've done in the past, our ability to have suites in R2 zones, and also even further with row housing, how we've allowed secondary suites, that we're well ahead of the province in this action already. So the province is just catching up to us.
Yeah, and this is really good legislation for bigger centers like Vancouver. We're already ahead of that game, but some of the planning that we were thoughtfully putting into place will be rushed now. And hence, Mr. Simon's comment about doing an amendment and then continuing on the full layout will be important. Any other comments from council? Councilor Orlando?
Your Worship, this will have costs, the work that staff is going to be doing to make these changes. The minister did also announce funding to support the implementation of these policies. So just a general question, I don't know which staff member to direct it to, but are we going to be able to recoup these costs and access those funds? And does staff need any direction or action from council to go ahead and make that ask?
Mr. Simon?
Through your worship, staff's understanding right now that is in January, similar to the Complete Communities Grant, the funds will be automatically dispersed based on population. And if we look at there, it's 51 million bucks, and the Complete Communities Grant was $1 billion. So it's approximately 5% of the complete communities. So if we go based on the numbers we got for complete communities, we anticipate $150,000. We haven't been given verification of what that number is yet. And the development services staff have been working closely with Director Moore to make sure that we have sufficient resources in the planning department to accommodate these necessary changes. So very much appreciated for council, and we will have to continue to work through what these changes mean and continue to reassess our capacity to implement them.
Mr. Palmer, then I'll go back at this point.
So one of the areas of impacts that may be outside the obvious is on our infrastructure. So we've recently completed a transportation master plan, a water master plan, wastewater master plan. I don't know that those plans anticipated the potential of up to triple increase in density in our communities. So there is impacts that will on the community going in.
Good. Councilor Leonard, did you have a follow-up?
Not really, actually, but since you asked, I might as well ask one follow-up. And speaking to sort of an additional observation, I guess, based on what Councilor Palmer was saying, and it's a question of Mr. Simon as well. Speaking of that change to infrastructure impact, infrastructure draw, oftentimes, the building sector is driven by market forces. People want to place 3-bedroom condos where it makes most sense financially. So the development community, for example. And I was wondering if Mr. Simon has sort of initial reaction on what he thinks this change will, what the main impact of this change will be, such as, for example, more activity in one area of town that will need more infrastructure like sewer, water pipes and stuff because everyone wants to be downtown or over there or over here or those kinds of things. That's one example, but I was just wondering what you think, what you start thinking of first, what sort of impacts you are anticipating upon seeing these changes.
Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, Councillor Orlando, very excellent question. I will say that staff have been at the forefront of working and making recommendations to the province on how the infrastructure impact associated with this legislation can be mitigated. We are still waiting what the results of those recommendations will ultimately be. As of right now, we did a pretty detailed residential land inventory as part of the official community plan, and the areas from a preliminary analysis perspective that are most suitable for infill development is most certainly south side in terms of the large lots, the proximity to services, as well as the proximity to major business center being downtown. I will note, and council will see it on the agenda on December 12th, staff are going to be working to apply for the Complete Communities Grant, which is $150,000 through UBCM. We would find out about it in April, and with that grant, we would want to look at doing some additional modeling as part of the zoning bylaw work to address these legislative changes to further nail down on exactly what Councillor Orlando is talking about. So we hope to continue that good work through this grant program if we are successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Fantastic.
All right. Any other comments? Councillor Cherry.
I just wanted to add that I'm very, I find it very enticing, this ACC program, especially with our timing of looking at building the multiplex. Curious to see how that plays out and any funding opportunities available for it.
Sure.
Outside of tax dollars.
Thank you. Item 13C, Public Infrastructure Committee minutes. Councillor Palmer, you have a comment?
Most of this we've addressed at a previous meeting, but the one that I'll flag, I don't think the director's here right now, but just on the liquid waste management plan with the province, we had a plan that was approved by the province, but it's kind of gone backtracked on that. So the director is actively trying to address those concerns around a plan that we understood was approved, that the previous council endorsed and we understood was approved, but sounds like some of their
new staff member changed things.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it's boiled down to. So.
Okay, right.
All right, Revelstoke Area Economic Development Commission minutes.
Yeah, your worship, I'm happy to provide an update and also would invite Director Braun to provide any supplements to this meeting. So just real quick to touch on a few agenda items. Economic Development is working on a community economic development website. So the committee reviewed the website as it's in its development process. Second item of business was the destination management plan. Most people will be familiar with this because the development of this plan has been at many committees getting lots of input. So we had another input session and further work on that, and Ms. Brand might want to elaborate. And then Mr. Attia provided a housing update. And we can never do that enough because there's actually so many different files on the go with housing. So thank him for providing the update on, for example, the Housing Accelerator Fund, which was a major effort starting in the early summer through the summer to get that application into this federal program through CMHC. Checking my email and Twitter every morning to take a look to see if there's been any announcements, and fingers crossed this is a major grant, and anything that we bring down will be the result of a lot of hard work from staff and community members and volunteers, members of the development community, members of the social housing community, to provide this is not a simple application. This is a complex application process that required a lot of work. So just want to kudos to everyone else. And then lastly, Forestry Roundtable, recap from the Forestry Roundtable efforts. Yeah, I'll leave it those ones there. And I don't know if Ms. Braun has any other further updates on this information.
I think it doesn't need to be long.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I will move on to the last letter. Received a letter from Dennis Paradine from Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship regarding planning process for the Complex Valley. Most of that has been changed into a park recently. So there's going to be some engagement and they will notify us as they move forward in their engagement process. Any council members have comment on that? Councillor Lando.
Your worship, thank you. I've engaged with staff involved in this process a little bit through email. It's my understanding that they are potentially looking for some sort of council representative. I don't know if it's that formal as a council representative, but community representatives to engage in the process. I know that pending the announcement of additional productions to the Nkomaplu area, there have been concerns about stakeholders about access and whatnot, especially stakeholders who are not part of a formal consultation process. So, a heli skiing tenure holder would receive correspondence on this, but somebody who kayaks there recreationally on the weekend would not. So I think the provincial government has identified an opportunity to reach out, collaborate with First Nations, collaborate with residents, collaborate with stakeholders in the area to hear those voices and hear those concerns and try to formulate plans and agreements moving forward. So I guess to put out to discussion for staff, is there any interest in I'm interested in being involved. I don't know if anyone else in the council or staff, or if there's a best approach to this, maybe you could be a staff representative, just gathering your thoughts.
Any comments from anyone? Say nothing at this point. Oh, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, Councillor Lando makes some very good points. When I read this, the letter read a bit ambiguous. So I didn't see a real tangible request, other than during an engagement, we would like to better understand our values. So it seems like they're asking, please reach out to us and we would provide. So I'm not hearing in this letter that they're asking for a representative. So I guess that because I think this is a community interest. And that we should be actively engaged because it represents a number of the a large portion of the residents within Revelstoke. So if you were looking for a formal resolution that you would be a liaison, I'd certainly be happy to. I'm not sure if we're ready for that or.
Yeah, I think it's premature at this point. Let me reach out to them and just see what their engagement process is, what they feel that they're going to be doing, and if they're looking for representation, by all means, we can bring that back and discuss that.
Your worship.
Mr. Parliament, and then I'll go to Council.
Oh, just quickly, Mr. Mayor, I can tell you that we've also been in discussion with the province on this, and they're prepared to come to council to make a presentation.
Okay.
If other members of council would like to see that, they're prepared to do that. I don't think it would be in December. It possibly could, most likely January. Thank you.
Well, let's ask them to come.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I think we need to hear that.
But I'd like to do that as a formal resolution. So I'll move that staff reach out to the
Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship
to come attend at a council meeting to provide an update on this process.
Sure. Seconder, Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion? Councillor Orlando, you were going to weigh in a short time ago.
Sure, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you. Just reviewing some of the correspondence I've had with the ministry contact. They said they are looking to make a presentation to City Council, so great, supportive of the motion. They also said they're looking to engage a councillor. Now, they have not made that request formally, as you can see from the wording of the letter before, so that might be something that arises once they make a presentation at the council, so we can discuss that point further then. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. All right, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, any questions from the press, Ms. Rousseau?
No questions, Your Worship.
All right, I'd like to go in camera pursuant to section 90.18 I and K of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion for me, please? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Cherry, all in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a 2-minute break and then come back in camera.